This happened way back in the 90s, some 30 years ago. I took the usual bus from my university to my home, but was experiencing a heavy headache. Back then, the bus tickets were color coded by day. I got my orange ticket and got in the bus together with other people with the same ticket color as mine. Then I sat down by the middle and closed my eyes. When my stop was near, I opened my eyes and felt something off. All the people around me looked different. It's not like I was paying special attention, mind you, just a general awareness of the people that were close by when the trip started, and I was pretty sure now they were different people. Whatever. I asked to get off at my stop, but the driver told me that I had to pay because he hadn't seen me getting in. Huh? How did he not see me? And how was that my fault? I showed him the orange ticket. He told me tickets were blue that day. I started to argue, but then noticed everyone else had blue tickets. What the hell? I clearly remembered everyone having orange tickets while getting in the bus, but now they all had blue tickets. I was so confused, but I had to pay again. During my walk home, I stopped by a public phone to call up a friend. Remember, it was the 90s. Most people didn't have cell phones back then like we do today. I dialed her home number, but a man answered and told me it was the wrong number. I called again. Same result. I was even more confused, not to mention that my head was killing me, so I hurried home. When I reached my home, nobody was there. I found it strange that the house was empty, since my parents very rarely went out. I called their names, looked around, but finally collapsed in my bed and fell asleep. An hour later, I woke up, and when I got out of my room, my parents were there, telling me they had been there all day, though they did mention being confused as to how neither of them noticed me arrive. I dialed my friend again, same number as before, but this time, she answered. I asked her if there was someone else in her house who picked up the phone earlier and if they were both pranking me, though I knew that she wasn't the kind of person to prank people. She told me no one else had been at her house that day and that she didn't receive any call before mine. I was dumbfounded, and even after 3 decades, I still don't know what to make of it. Nothing weird has happened to me ever since. A summary of some interesting comments on this post. While some pointed out that the OP's headache was the key detail here, which might have caused a neurological episode, resulting in messed up memory and attention, others pointed out that the actual key details here were the bus driver and the parents. The bus driver didn't notice OP getting on the bus, and neither of the parents noticed OP returning home. The headache hallucination explanation doesn't explain that. Clearly, it wasn't a case of bad memory here, not to mention that people who claim to have experienced such glitches in reality often mention getting similar headaches. What if the headache was a result of OP glitching between different realities? The large black jeep that never arrived. I fully believe that we live in a supernatural world, but I don't know if the story is a glitch in the Matrix or something paranormal. This event happened to me and my mother years ago, but we sometimes talk about it and we still can't explain what happened. It happened in Longwatton in England, but I don't know the exact name of the road. My mother was driving me home after school had finished. I was 14 at the time, and the roads that led us home were usually quiet and safe. My mother had been driving for years, even back then, and could control a car if something dangerous would have happened. Basically, she's a great driver. We were driving down the road, not that fast, but at normal speed. But then, out of nowhere, my mother starts swerving the car on an empty road, and I was freaking out. I clearly remember seeing this large black Jeep with tinted windows trailing behind us, so I thought the car was most definitely going to crash into the back of our car. Then, my mom finally stops the car on the side of the road. Obviously, she's freaked out too. But what was odd was that the large black Jeep with tinted windows never came. It never stopped behind us. It didn't even pass by us. It was like the Jeep just vanished into thin air. When we got home, driving slower than usual, I asked my mother, "What do you think happened?" She told me that she felt a dark energy sitting behind her controlling and forcing her hands to swerve the car. The next day, we were on the same road, but nothing happened, thankfully. Has anyone else experienced something connecting with a mysterious large black Jeep with tinted windows? Edit. So I researched the area to see if something happened, and apparently, some teenager crashed his car and died there. I guess it becomes more of a paranormal thing than glitch in the matrix. But I don't know if our incident is connected with the teenager. Because what if this same reason was the reason for the teenager to die? That would make it a glitch in the matrix. That black Jeep that never arrived is something that I can't explain. A friend of mine, who was in her 70s, passed away 2 weeks ago. She was a small business owner, had been planning and talking for years about who she would leave her shop to. There was an initial will made in 2022, but in 2025, she changed it slightly. There was a first draft of this revised will shared through Google Docs between her lawyer and I, in which I was asked to make any necessary changes, as the lawyer was a friend of hers and not local. On the first draft, there was one executor, the woman who would be co-owning the business with me. However, the future co-owner didn't feel comfortable being the sole executor and asked that I also be added. That role isn't something I was hoping for by any means, but I changed it to make sure that she felt better. Then I printed the edited copy out for our business owner to take. The day finally came when two separate witnesses and my friend's husband went with her to a notary and had the will made official. I saw everyone a little later in the day and was given a copy of the new will, now signed and notarized. When I received it, I looked it over and realized that it was the first draft that the lawyer had mailed her rather than the edited version that I had printed. I remember looking it over and being surprised, but I thought, oh well, it was still one executor. One could probably do it easier. An year goes by, and our friend passes unexpectedly in April. In the next few days that followed, future co-owner and I couldn't find our own copies of the will anywhere. It's like the copies magically disappeared for both of us. We were both shocked and started to panic a little when our deceased friend's husband couldn't find the original. While all three of us were looking for some kind of evidence of the new will, I shared a copy of the one from Google Docs just so everyone could remember the info. But I told them, it says on this copy that there are two executors, but the one signed only has one. My friend, the executor, was surprised and worried since it was a responsibility she didn't want on her own. I told her I would be as much help as I could, so she would do fine. On the third day of our friend's unexpected death, her husband finally found the original and let us know that it could be picked up. When future co-owner got it and filed it with the clerk's office, she took a few copies and gave me one. The first thing she did was point out that I had been wrong. We were both named executors on the original will that was signed the previous year. I was in shock. I'm still in shock because I literally remember where I was standing, looking at my previous copy that was now somehow lost, feeling surprised and slightly worried about how the edited version with us both as executors had been forgotten and not used. But now both our names are on it, with the signatures of every person who was there that day at the notary. There is no explanation at all for this. It couldn't have been possible. I'm still shocked, but have put it in the jar of strange, unexplained events from my life. I honestly shouldn't be so surprised anymore when things this obvious happen. A few months ago, I had an evening work assignment at a community center. It was my second week there. During the first week, my point of contact was a nice woman who was the only one dressed elegantly. She stood out from the scientists and the public in a light-colored dress, and I just thought she seemed really cool. Now the second week, I was waiting in a car with the driver when I saw her walking toward the sidewalk with two other people. This was already an unusual thing for such an event, but then a man on a bike rode up, and they had a brief exchange. I later found out that he had found one of their phones and had come to return it. I was going to take a picture because the whole situation looked so bizarre, a government employee having this unexpected exchange. But right when I was about to do that, my phone screen froze, so I wasn't able to click a picture. She was wearing a light colored fitted dress again, like the previous week, and I was talking about how she stood out from everyone else because of her outfits. A few minutes later, they walked back toward the building. I got out of the car and walked up to greet them. This is what happened next. She came over to greet me, but she was wearing a black dress. Just a few minutes ago, during the phone exchange, I and the driver had seen her in a light dress. I assumed that a drink must have fallen over her dress, though it was weird how quickly she was able to change. So I asked her what happened and why she had changed. She seemed genuinely confused about what I was saying. She said she didn't change her dress and had been wearing a black dress the entire time. We talked about it a few times, and she said she did wear the beige colored dress that I was describing, but it was on one of the days from the previous week when she wore that dress. I later googled the photos from that meeting, and that turned out to be true. She did wear that exact dress on one of the days from the previous week. Also, while talking, the last time I brought it up, she said, "Well, if what you're saying is true, it proves that none of this is real." It was a public event that she was hosting, and I still don't know where she would have changed, or why someone would even bring two dresses to an event like that. It was so weird, not to mention how quickly you would have to get changed, because I had seen her in a different colored dress literally a few minutes ago. I was walking to the gym yesterday. It was evening. The sky looked beautiful, like it always does during twilight hours. To my right, I saw a bunch of skyscrapers. I'm in Moscow right now, and these looked very out of place for the area I'm staying in. I thought they were a bunch of business centers, and didn't really question it that much. They were futuristic looking, black windowed, lights at the top illuminating them, like straight out of cyberpunk world. I'm here visiting family, so I don't really know this area well, and all the times I've been in Russia before, I never passed by here because I wasn't as into the gym as I am now. On my way back from the gym, they were still there, but something was definitely off. The best way to describe it was that they looked like they were being projected there, not actually physically there. I pulled out my phone and took a photo. To my shock, upon observation, they didn't appear in the photo. I took another photo, and the same thing happened. I was and still am a little confused and a little scared. I came home and asked my grandmother when those buildings were built, and she just gave me a blank stare before telling me that she had no idea what I was talking about. I took my mom and grandma outside to the street from which I had seen them, and they weren't there. I was speechless. As we were heading back, I kept looking back at the area to make sure that they really weren't there. I'm not crazy, but I have no explanation for this. What I saw was too detailed for it to be a hallucination. I wasn't drunk or on any drugs. I wasn't drunk or on any drugs. I don't even have a history of drug usage. Was my mind just playing tricks on me? Was it a vision from the future? Or was it an alternate parallel reality? This story is about a hair straightener, and it's one of the most bizarre experiences I have ever had. My niece recently visited me with her friend. They stayed overnight, slept in my son's room. The next day, they left. After they left, my niece texted me to let me know that her friend left her hair straightener and a couple other small items at my place by mistake. Mostly, they just wanted me to find the straightener. We live in different cities, but I visit my nieces every month or two, so I could return it the next time I visit her. I found this hair straightener in a colorful case on my son's bed. I very distinctly remember seeing it there and putting it aside on a bookshelf. Well, I remember seeing it and picking it up, pretty certain that I put it on a bookshelf. But to note, I never remember seeing it in my house after that day. Around 2 months later, I planned to go to their city, so I looked for the straightener. I searched the entire house, but can't find it, and assume one of the kids moved it. I feel bad since the friend has been waiting, and my niece reminded me about it the week prior. I see my niece and tell her that I'm sorry, I couldn't find it, but I'm sure it will show up. She said, actually, and this is so weird, Amber just found it in her drawer a couple days ago. My niece, her friend, and I were all so confused. I hadn't been back to their city since, and the straightener hadn't shown up at her house until 2 days before I came to their city. This was also around the same time I would have been looking for it to pack it, which again is very weird. Every time I remember the image of it sitting on my son's bed in this colorful case, I feel chills. How did it end up 2.5 hours away in a different city? Edit. So people are wondering if maybe she just left the case behind, and maybe her mom or dad found the straightener in her belongings and put it where they thought it belongs. Guys, she lives alone. She graduated high school early, not emancipated, but moved in her new place like half a year ago. She also just turned 18, but was 17 when this happened. About the case, it's the type of case that doesn't completely cover the object. Like, it was mostly covered with the top of the straightener visible. And if somehow I'm misremembering that, and it wasn't in it, I also haven't been able to find that case, despite searching for it everywhere. This disturbing story left wounds in me that I'll never be able to stitch back. This might be a bit long, but hear me out. It was 4 years ago in the central region of Transylvania in Romania. Me and my girlfriend, who's now my wife, used to chill during summer nights just outside the town, next to a forest. The place had a really nice view. Summer houses and mountains look really nice in summer. The place is not necessarily isolated, but you have to cross a forest by car to get there. And let's say you see a car driving by every 5 minutes or so. We have been there hundreds of times, nothing special, until this evening, which seemed really normal at first. We were smoking cigarettes, watching the view, just recovering after work. Suddenly, this really strange vibe came around. Something very primal, hard to describe. It's like out of nowhere, something around woke up, and you kind of felt part of it, and kind of had a hint of what this was, and you knew that it was bad. The thing is, we are both quite skeptical, so we don't really think much of topics like glitches, premonitions, precognition, etc. But when this happened, we both knew, instantly, without even talking to each other, that it was time to go. It was a feeling mixed with the sound the forest and the wind made at the same time. Very hard to describe. It's like the whole world changed for a second, and something opened. Anyway, things didn't finish here. I started driving like it was the race of my life. But right when we started driving, we passed something that looked like some sort of black animal. It was unclear what it was. And that thing started running after the car and could keep up somehow with the car until it eventually hit one of the wheels, and I heard and felt the impact, which made the whole situation even crazier. We just drove straight home and never spoke about it until some months later. It left me with a feeling of disgust and fear, and I want to forget about it or wish that it never happened, though it's interesting how our minds work when we know in advance that something awful is gonna happen. Makes me wonder about how much information we consume unconsciously for our minds to get such accurate precognitions and premonitions.